Hello, good evening. Welcome everyone to the Moose Jaw Museum and Art Gallery and to the opening reception and panel discussion for our fall exhibition, Leesa Streifler, The Performance of Being.
Thank you.
I'm Jennifer McRorie, the curator and director of the Moose Jaw Museum and Art Gallery. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're gathering in Moso Tapscon, now known as Moose Jaw and Treaty 4 territory, the traditional lands of the Blackfoot, Nehewak, Anishinaabe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. At the Moose Jaw Museum and Art Gallery, we recognize that museums and galleries are part of a colonial system where colonial narratives and collection practices have been the foundations of these institutions. We're committed to decolonizing our institution by inviting and supporting Indigenous voices to lead and inform our programming of Indigenous art, history, and cultural narratives, as well as making space for diverse voices from our community to co-curate and have their cultures and narratives reflected in our programs and exhibition content. So welcome to this opening reception for the exhibition. As I said, The Performance of Being. It presents a retrospective survey of the work of one of Canada's leading feminist artists, Leesa Streifler, and presents the work over the course of her 40-year career. The exhibition explores Leesa's sustained interest in the representation, performance, and politics of marginalized and non-conforming bodies. Drawing on her own lived experience and informed by feminist theory, her powerful, emotionally charged, and expressive works present figures that defy social convention, behavioral norms, and traditional gender roles to engage in critical discourse on body image, sexuality, agency, performativity, relationships, motherhood, illness, and aging. Drawn from public and private collections nationwide, this survey brings together over 100 works in drawing, painting, mixed media, photography, and installation, exemplifying the significant contributions of Streifler's critically acclaimed practice towards feminist art in Canada. I want to thank our funders. Major funding for this touring retrospective is provided by the Government of Canada through the Department of Canadian Heritage Museum Assistance Program. Our funders also include the City of Moose Jaw, Sask Arts, Sask Culture, the Saskatchewan Lotteries, Canada Council for the Arts. Support for the exhibition is also provided by the National Gallery of Canada, which is one of the exhibition lenders. Other lenders include the Canada Council Art Bank, the Province of Manitoba, University of Manitoba, University of Saskatchewan, Mackenzie Art Gallery, Dunlop Art Gallery, and Nickel Galleries in Calgary, as well as Leesa Streifler and private collections. So this evening I'm joined by Leesa Streifler, co-curator Wayne Baerwaldt, and art historian and writer Joan Borsa, for a conversation about the exhibition and Leesa's practice. Although we're going to approach this as an interview, I invite you to, if you have any questions at any point, please put up your hand, and we do have a wireless mic. We can bring that to you so you can participate in the conversation. So I'll start by introducing Leesa. Leesa Streifler received a BFA in Honors from the University of Manitoba and an MFA from Hunter College in New York. She taught in the Department of Visual Arts at the University of Regina for over 30 years, influencing generations of art students. She's exhibited widely in Canada and internationally and has been the recipient of numerous grants and awards from Sask Arts, Manitoba Arts Council, and Canada Council for the Arts. Her work is included in major public collections, of which I've named most of them, and she's passionate about feminism and art education, actively mentoring other artists through MAWA, mentoring artists for women's art in Winnipeg. Wayne Baerwaldt is a visual arts curator and media producer based near St. Victor, Saskatchewan. And as an art gallery director and curator, he's worked at various cultural institutions, including Plug-In in Winnipeg, the Power Plant in Toronto, and Illingworth Kerr Gallery at ACAD, which is now University of Arts Alberta University of Arts. He has many curatorial projects on the go. One of them is a retrospective by Robert Boulay, an exhibition of Marie Lanou's work, In Extremis, and I can't think of the title.
And an exhibition by Edessa Hendelis, a Toronto, New York-based artist, called Grand Hotel in Venice right now. If you happen to be in Venice before the end of November, please go see this show.
Thanks, Wayne. And Joan Borsa is an independent curator, critic, and art history and former art history lecturer at the University of Saskatchewan. Her current research and independent projects have focused on the shifting terms and forms of contemporary curating. She's published extensively in various magazines, journals, and exhibition catalogs, including Third Text, Paradoxa, Canadian Women's Studies, Vanguard, Naming a Practice, Curatorial Studies for the Future, and Feminist Art Theory from 1968 to 2000 by Blackwell Publishers. She's taught at Emily Carr College of Art and Design, Simon Fraser University, the University of Saskatchewan, and Concordia University. So thanks to you all for being here. I was wondering, Leesa, if you could start us off by telling us what it's like to see a survey of your work from the last 40 years.
It's hard to say. I've been trying to think of what I should say. I'm really quite flabbergasted, actually, and very humbled. And, it's hard to believe that it's happened. Hard to believe that I was asked to do it and that it actually has happened. It's been 3 years in the making. And it's, I don't think they're my babies, those works, but they're definitely my friends. And they're all really in good condition because they've been kept in good condition by the collections that they're in. And I'm really glad to see them in good condition. So that's I appreciate that they're all looking really good. They're not tattered, falling apart, and cracked or anything like that. So that was sort of my first feeling. And then I have so much gratitude to Jen for organizing this exhibition, and to Jen and Wayne for curating the exhibition, and for the care that's been put into thinking and organizing and sorting through my work. It's very humbling. And, I was thinking, as an artist, you go to your studio and no one really cares that you're going there. No one really says anything about your work, not even when you have a show usually. Oh, I liked it, it was very nice, congratulations. That's all very nice. But rarely do you hear any intensive discussion or analysis or thoughtful thinking about your work. I mean, you just don't, and you don't expect it. You just expect that you make your work and you're excited about it, and some things, one thing leads to another and you continue on, and sometimes you get a grant and you're very excited. Sometimes you get a show and you're very excited. But rarely do you have anybody writing about your work like Joan did in such a beautiful way, and Jen and Wayne did, organizing your work and looking through it and asking questions and being so interested in your work. It's just, I don't know, it's such an honor. It's very humbling. But seeing it all together is very interesting, and I've been doing some high school tours. I've done 4 of them in the last couple days. And so it's interesting because I'm taking the students through the different galleries, and I'm realizing I just say the same things over and over and over again. Like, I haven't got any new ideas. They're just like, I go, oh, I was just talking about that in the work I did 40 years ago. Well, I just did it 2 years ago. So I have like 5 themes, or 10 maybe. And I keep going over them and over them and over them, and I'm trying to figure them out. And there's no solution. And there's just different ways of approaching the same problem. And so it still keeps me interested. But really, it's just a repetition in different media, different types of figures, different interactions. But really, it's really the same subject matter over and over. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess it's up to you to figure out. But But this is just what I do, and it's just I've been living a long time, thank God, and I'm just glad that I'm here to see it. I'm very glad about that. And, I hope to work for another 20 years, so maybe there'll be another one, who knows. But anyway, I don't expect anything else. This is the culmination of my career, even though I'm working very hard still, and I'm trying to be better and better. I don't expect more. This is like the icing on the cake with the cherry, like satisfied.
Thanks, Leesa. I wondered, Wayne, if you wanted to start us off about talking about the different categories that we chose to organize Leesa's work in.
Sure, and I think if we're talking about categories, we're also talking about the same language as themes, that you've been working with for decades right now and continue to work with. I don't think it's in the same manner, though, as earlier on. I think that the work becomes more and more sophisticated over time, by the way, and I think we'll talk a little bit about that. But just for some of the people, I'm looking out in the audience, and a lot of you know Leesa and Leesa's work. However, some people might not, so I'm going to quickly dive into a number of the themes that Leesa is alluding to, and just to give you a couple of quick notes. So the first one would be memory and innocence, and you'll see in the exhibition space, we've divided the works up under these themes, and really there's a lot of cross-pollination between the themes. So and that, I think, is part of the sophistication of the work. The complexity of the work is to see the work on various levels, and all of these themes have an interplay, regardless of where they're positioned in the gallery space. So the first one that you'll see when you enter is memory and innocence. So over the trajectory of Leesa's more than 40-year career, her works have engaged us in exploring emotionally charged spaces where the private self meets the public sphere. It is in these spaces where the performance of Streifler's figures play out, asserting their subjectivity while lamenting the lack of agency over their own representation, resisting the control of socially accepted norms of behavior and gender, and challenging the public, objectifying the gaze that seeks to make them other. It sounds like gobbledygook, but I think once you get into the space, you'll see what I mean. Another theme is performativity. At its core, Leesa's studio production over the past 30 years is a rigorous and sustained critique of the various ways women contort themselves, physically and mentally, in the form of enactments based on conventions and tradition. The compulsion is to fit into and meet societal expectations and reproduce meaning in support of patriarchal controls, largely over the bodies of women. Leesa seeks to undermine the socially acceptable behavior of women by representing her body and the staging of her body and other bodies as a relationship with the world writ large. I should mention, too, that throughout the exhibition, you'll see displays of her sketchbooks from 1985, 86, 83 even.
83.
1983. There's one from 1980.
1980.
1980, really? Okay.
Well, there's one artist book.
The artist book, yes. So from 1980 to the present, these sketchbooks, they're selected, and they're, I think, equally revealing of her engagement with social subjectivity. Her sketches in pan and mixed media represent the living present. This is sort of the diaristic way that an artist works in the studio, with text, collaging images, making original drawings. They act as the connective tissue to her worldview, often manifesting a critical and even cynical attitude toward the conventional subjects and forms that challenge her sense of social justice, or, in the day it was called, social injustice. Another theme is photography and the performative subject. Photography plays a significant role in Leesa's oeuvre, especially from the late 1980s and throughout the 1990s. Photograph serves as support services, which she animates and subverts the medium by appropriating and altering the images with drawing, painting, and text to reveal hidden and new meanings. Another theme is the carnivalesque. A consistent presence in her work is a complex and varied representation of the carnivalesque as a stylistic approach. Informed by Mikhail Bakin's theories of the carnivalesque and Julia Kristeva's theories of the abject, her focus is the reinterpretation of the othered body, bodies that do not fit within the social norm. Primarily posing her own body in various media, either photographed, redefined with deliberate mark-making in ink and paint, and often imprinted with hand-drawn autobiographical text, she creates images that disturb the social orders of gender, behavior, and public self-representation. Finally, fear, anxiety, sorrow, and rage. Actually, I'm going to leave that one. I think you'll see a lot of that throughout different sections of the exhibition, and with good reason. And I think we'll discuss some of that in the upcoming conversation. Oh, I think I'm next. Sorry. So, Leesa, can you tell us a little bit about your early years and the influences in New York during your MFA and how you were exposed to neo-expressionism and street culture, the merging of high and low culture at the time? How did your studies and instructors at the time impact on your subject matter and stylistic approaches to the kind of representation that came out at the time in your studio?
Well, I went to New York in 1980 after finishing my BFA at the University of Manitoba, and I went there to do my MFA at Hunter College. And Hunter College had an MA program, but they were getting their accreditation for the MFA, so they didn't really know what they were doing. We didn't get studios. We had to have our own studios. Now they have fantastic studio building and everything. So the program was so loose that, I spent most of the time on the street. Talk about street culture. I was the one on the street and learning from the street, going to galleries. So that really was most of my education. I had some excellent profs, but really only one of them, who no one's going to know his name, he's not well known, really influenced me. So it wasn't my education per se at the university that influenced me, it was being in New York. So, it was completely different than Winnipeg, obviously. And I spent a lot of time just on the street. I always had a studio. I had 4 studios in 6 years. So I was always moving, subletting studios. So I got to know lots of areas, the East Village, Harlem, Park Avenue South, and North Moor. So those are my 4 locations. And I really knew the art of the time because I was an avid gallery goer. I just couldn't get enough of it, like Julian Schnabel and David Sally and all those painters. I loved them. And it was when Keith Haring was making his work in the subways. So I was taking the subway and I'd see that there was I didn't even know who Keith Haring was, but I saw that there was this new thing all the time, and that it would be black and then there'd be another thing. And it was just so exciting, and it was super stimulating and exciting, and so that's where my education happened. And so when I was there, I was doing performance art. I started from my 4th year at U of M. I was doing performance art, so that's how I came into the program at Hunter College. And then I started making sculptures that were made out of paper and cardboard and all kinds of things like that. Then I started making, they all stemmed from my drawings in my sketchbook, which you'll see at the first table when you walk in. I started making what I called cutouts. And they were made out of sheet metal and painted with household enamel, like ship paint. And they were about 4 feet tall, and they were figurative, but they were very abstract. And then they grew to being made out of plywood, and they were 8 feet tall, and they were bolted together, so they had some kind of bas-relief aspects to them, but they were shown against the wall and painted, and they were combinations of human figures, animal figures, and architecture, and nature elements. So you'll see drawings of those because they don't exist anymore, unfortunately. That's how it goes. And so that's what I was doing there. And drawings in chalk pastel and charcoal. So I wasn't making paintings, and I did make a few paintings, but I wasn't into doing anything traditional. I wanted to do things that I thought were more experimental.
Well, Leesa, I would say that you were there at the right time because there was a real period of cross-pollination between different disciplines and media, so that you could have you could be involved in performance, sculpture, both in the street and in the studio, theory. There was the emergence of theory within the art world, studio practices that could be considered research. All of that was like coming together. It's a perfect time for you to be there. And I think you see that sort of inspiration leading you through 30 years of production in the studio.
Okay. Well said, Wayne.
But to go on to another subject.
Also, I just have to say one more thing. That to support myself, I was waitressing and teaching kids. I taught kids at a private art school, private school that was in a brownstone off of Fifth Avenue, and I had a room at the top that was the art room, so that was cool. But mostly I was waitressing. So I'd go to my studio and I'd waitress, and I was figuring out how to just make enough money so that I could pay the rent and eat. But otherwise, I wanted to be in my studio. So other artists were working for artists, stuff like that, working at galleries. But I didn't want that kind of job. I didn't want a job where I had to think or take it home or anything. I just wanted a job where I could make the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time. And yeah, that's what I did.
Well, at the same time, there's an image that we just saw 2 slides ago or 2 images ago of Cleo. This is a recurring image. Can you talk about this character?
So then what happened was I applied for a Canada Council grant. I don't know how I thought of that because there were no professional issues classes, and they weren't going to tell us about the Canada Council in New York. So I guess I figured it out that I should apply for a Canada Council grant. It was 1983, and I actually got the grant. And it was the time when they came and they got your work. There were 2 levels. If you got into the short list, then they came and they got your physical work and they took it to Ottawa. So this truck came and took my cutouts and everything, and the guy said, "I'm going to bring you back the grant, lady." And I thought, oh yeah, sure. And I don't even know how I got the grant typed. I have no idea. I typed it on a typewriter, but anyway. Turns out, I didn't know who he was, but Vic Sikansky was on the jury. So then I sent letters out by post, written by hand, I think, or typed, I guess, by someone, to all the universities in Canada, since I had my MFA and I got a grant. So I thought that makes me maybe eligible for a teaching job. So I wrote to all the universities, put them in the mail. So the U of R answered that they have a 1-year job. And I thought, oh my God, can I go to Regina? I don't know. I'm a New Yorker. I don't know if I can go to Regina. And, being a Winnipegger originally, Regina I thought was a very small place. I wasn't sure what it was like. Anyway, I looked in the phone book at the time, and there was a Le Chateau in Regina. So I thought, must be an okay place. And then this is the mind of a 20-something-year-old. And then I thought, then I saw the Mackenzie Art Gallery had this show called, what was it called? Space Invaders. And I thought, oh my God, and Jonathan Borofsky was in it and all these other, I thought, this is a good place. So anyway, I didn't get the job. I didn't get it. So all that year I was like, oh my God, I didn't get the job. I'm going to apply for the next year. So the next year I got it. So it was a 1-year job. I came to Regina, totally different than New York, obviously. Anyway, I was the only woman on the faculty, and that doesn't lead to Cleo. So to make a long story short, I should say that when I got to Regina, it reminded me of Winnipeg. I mean, it's more similar to Winnipeg than New York. So I started thinking about my childhood in Winnipeg, and I thought, I used to have this bath toy, and it was Cleo from Pinocchio, big, a little fish with a big face and a little tail. And I loved Cleo, and I thought that could be a stand-in for myself as a little girl. So I was looking for an image to be me. So that's how Cleo started. And there's lots of drawings of Cleo in my sketchbooks you'll see in the case, too. Okay. Was I supposed to say something else too?
No, that sounds great. That's great. Joan, I have a question for you. So you're one of 2 writers for essays for the upcoming publication for the exhibition. And I was wondering if you could talk about why you chose to focus on... Normal from 1997 at the Dunlop Art Gallery.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for including me. And Leesa, congratulations. Jennifer and Wayne, congratulations. That's it. That's all I have to say. Okay, so my essay is called Remaking Normal. These are related images, intimate acts of critical distance. And why I decided to focus on that body of work, Normal, there are multiple reasons. The first one is it was the first body of work that I saw by Leesa Streifler, and it made an impression. And I thought, who is this misbehaving gal that is quite subversive and non-conforming? And I thought, something in this work really speaks to me. So it always had lingered as a kind of contact point, that particular body of work. And when I was asked to do an essay for the show, you look through all the possibilities. I mean, you've seen some of the work downstairs, you know how many choices there are. So as a writer, you have to focus on something. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go with my starting point, my introduction to this artist's work. And there are many reasons. I thought that there was something really intriguing about the way the work engaged with critical feminist theory, and yet through, as visual artists do, offered us perspective that was completely different. So I've always believed that visual art produces theory, not just kind of stands beside it. And I was quite fascinated with the way that you originated so many images that corresponded with notions of critical theory that I was really familiar with. I knew that you were very well versed in critical theory and feminist theory, and it was really important to you. And in those works, Leesa's starting point was she was her own muse. She photographed herself in a number of poses and identities, and then altered the images. So I was quite fascinated with her makeovers, where she literally wrote over the images with her favorite white felt tip pens. And in doing that, she really subverted the way that all of this sort of sexualization, objectification of women's bodies, what women's bodies are supposed to look like and do. And she played with it. It was humorous, it was witty, it was transgressive. And I loved the way that you were always putting on costumes, masks, disguises, and what that allowed you to say that normally women might have a hard time saying. I also, as I mentioned in the essay, I included Leesa's work from that series in my favorite art history course that I've ever taught, which was Rebels with a Cause, Feminism in the Visual Arts. And so she is like a fellow rebel. But there were particular points in history where feminist art, I think, became recognized, legitimized, and other times where we were fighting like crazy to be recognized. And in that work, it's quite personal, it's diaristic, and I know that at different times you were not so certain whether you would actually exhibit the work or not, which goes back to this terrain that so many women artists had to push through, fight through, and get to another place. And so I really recognized the way that your particular approach to misbehaving created spaces for a different notion of women's identity, pointing to the need to tell stories in a different way. What has been obliterated, misrepresented, silenced, And I really liked the performativity that was in that body of work, that series. And it really sort of reminded me of this whole notion of the idea that femininity, all femininity is a performance, and goes back to theorists like Judith Butler, who basically say, not just femininity, masculinity, and gender, that we become really familiar with the tropes, and we reproduce them, and we repeat them, and we repeat them often enough that we start to think of them as normal. And once we think of them as normal, then frequently we don't question why we plaster our faces with so much makeup, or why we contort our bodies and suck in our guts, or any other things that we constantly do, cover our gray hair, et cetera, et cetera. So the way that those works of yours referred to all of that huge terrain, but from the particularity of your own experience, really fascinated me and anchored, I think, a lot of what your work is about. So then, you know, as I was thinking about the way that you maneuvered and navigated that whole space of body image, et cetera, I wondered, so then how do I make sense of what she did later? Because obviously she didn't stay with that particular type of work. She's not static in her expression, medium, anything. This is an artist who moves around and rethinks and is very intuitive. But where did all of this take her was kind of a question to myself. And particularly because I knew that your most recent body of work, She Is Present, which was at the Dunlop Art Gallery, would not be included in this exhibition, but I had seen images and I was very curious about this work. And I was trying to think of what's the trajectory here? How did this artist get from that point to this point? And so I felt like I was tracking something about the remaking of normal. And I felt that you brought me to a place where there was now a much more embodied subjectivity, where there was a more confident and assertive version of who she is. Not this kind of resisting the previous scripts that had been inherited, but clearing a space for those stories that we need to come to terms with, that are out there all around. So then I saw particular works in terms of how you did this with the recipe card series, where you refer to your mother-in-law's recipe cards, handwritten. Now, when you are going through somebody's, a loved one's, archive, it's just as easy to throw those things out as it is to look at them and say, in some ways, this is symbolic. This is an archive of some significance. And you worked with it. And in doing that, you transformed them, you blew them up, you added your own material to them. But really, what you're doing is you're offering a particular perspective and legacy on a particular woman that probably needs a little bit of honoring. You did that with the painting Her House, which was about your grandmother, which really embodies, it's kind of an homage to your grandmother and to your relationship and to her impact on your life. And that's a very different kind of presentation then of how you're dealing with female identity. And so you brought me to a place where I thought you're remaking what is normal, and you're creating the space for intimacy and criticality at the same time. And I think that the last thing I want to say about that is that many of the paintings then that and works, not only paintings, that I went on to look at really kind of closely, they're very deeply interior worlds where it's not sort of some external version of what a woman should be, what femininity is, what gender is, but you're bringing it really close back to home. And I think that that's something that in all of the conversations that we had before I started to really shape the essay, you would remind me or yourself, or it just would always fall out, that what really held your attention most was what lies beneath the surface, beneath the sort of superficial level of being. And so then that notion of the performativity of being and how we etch that out on our own terms, it felt to me that Normal anchored it, and then it gave me the license to play with it. The end.
Wow, wow. I think she deserves a round of applause. If I could just say something for a second. I had a few Zoom calls with Joan and some emails, and it was just so rich. I mean, I felt like I was, not because of her, but because of me, I felt like I was in therapy because I was like telling her all this intimate stuff because she was interested. And it was just so rich for me. And then she was responding, and I was getting her take on things and the theories that she was attaching to what I was doing. And oh my God, it was just a beautiful, beautiful and deep experience and extremely enriching for me. So thank you.
Joan, I don't think we have to go on. That was great. But I think one thing that you brought forward is this idea of the sharing of thoughts, personal thoughts, that become social in a big way. I think when we look at the sketchbooks and we look at your use of text, it's personal, but it's also something that we can relate, most people can relate to. You'll see once you get into the exhibition. But I'm just wondering if you could talk about text and the decision-making process that you use to reveal or conceal text, you know, that is diaristic or about social injustice issues, etc.
Text. Okay. Sometimes I use text just to start a piece, and it doesn't end up, you know, being much of the piece. Like there's a recent work. It's a 2-paneled diptych from 2022, I think, and it's called Storybook Her Life. It's never been shown until now. And there you can see some text in there, and I did start it with a lot of writing using chalk pastel, because I know I can get rid of that easily. And I needed that for me, just to use words. It turns out I'm a big word person. I mean, I didn't really know that until sometime in the late 80s. Before that, I didn't show myself reveal to myself any interest in words, but it just started. I started writing a lot in my sketchbooks, equal amount to drawing. And sometimes it's more poetic kind of writing, or writing that might exist on its own, like in the Affirmations of Anger piece. Sometimes it's diaristic journal kind of writing, and then other times just words. So anyway, that's how I started that piece. And you can see a bit of it, and I don't mind if you don't see any of it. That's fine. Doesn't really contribute a lot to the piece, but it contributed to my being able to start the piece. In other ones, like fear, you know, there's 2 works about fear. It's the letters of the word fear, and they're all scrambled up, but it's not too hard to tell that that's fear. Other pieces, well, Normal has a lot of writing in it, and I want you to read that because it's very important to the idea behind the work. In my journals, like words just come to me along with imagery. I just love language. I'm drawn to it, to writing. But is that answering your question? Oh, maybe you're talking about the recipe cards. In the recipe cards, it was very interesting to me to put my text alongside my mother-in-law's beautiful writing, her cursive writing, to insert some of my text in there, almost like having a dialogue with her. And that was really interesting to me. So I think there's a real place for words, but then there's lots of times there isn't a place for it, or the image can say it alone.
Here's some of the cards.
Yeah, there's the recipe cards. So, and sometimes like the middle one at the bottom is very revealing. I mean, I'm talking about the pharmaceuticals I'm on. And, other people would not be bragging or talking about that. I'm not bragging, but I mean, exposing that to the world, what kind of pills they're on. But for me, it's important to get it out there too. I guess it's because I want to communicate that and I want to share it, because it's not that I really want to share it. I think it's more that when I'm making the piece, it's important to me to get that out, and I don't mind sharing it. I feel like I'm strong enough. No one's going to hurt me. I feel like I'm strong enough to put that out there. It's a normal thing. I mean, it's not something deviant I'm doing. I'm on some pills, so, what can I do? So, I mean, it's a weakness. You might think it's a weakness, but I mean, I don't mind if you know. I don't mind if you know. And maybe someone else will read it and see themselves in there and feel, oh, that's okay. She's on that. I'm on that. It's okay. And so stuff like that, I'm not really afraid to put very personal stuff out there, because I feel like I'm a regular person. I'm a person in the world. I'm not, doing anything bad. So I'm who I am, and I'm going to put it out there. And I need to reveal that, and I need to talk about it. I need to put that down. I need to write about that stuff that's not so pretty. And I kind of feel like I'm protected in some way because I was honest.
Leesa, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the importance of photography in your work, and especially the work that you were making in the 90s, and you were influenced by the theories of Susan Sontag and Roland Barthes and the ideas around, the objectifying gaze of photography and how it captures a subject. But I was also interested in the idea of how the importance of the pose in photography to your work, and how when a subject is captured in a photograph, it's forced into its own objecthood, that it surrenders because of its pose to objecthood. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the normal work started in Banff in 1992, and I was photographing myself. I had a cable release on my 35 millimeter camera on a tripod, and so I decided I was going to do poses that were either mean and angry, but a lot of anger or strength in some way, and then poses where I was had no strength, and I was totally passive or weak. So I did those two poses, and then I had the pictures, photographs printed. It was wet darkroom photography. They were sent back to me. Michael Rankin actually printed them. He's here today. And then they were in a stack, 5x7s, and then I drew and wrote on them. But the only thing I was responding to was a weak or a strong pose. So I wanted one or the other. In terms of pose and objectification, in 2003, in the Contain series, there's a pinup girl. And the pinup girl, talk about a pose, right? They had real poses there that were supposed to be very sexy and very attractive to soldiers in the war. That was the purpose of the pinup girl. And I thought, this is disgusting. I mean, it's just like making women into like these, like, so objectifying, scantily clad in these crazy, silly, stupid poses with maybe a paintbrush or something on top of a ladder, I mean, just ridiculous. So the woman that I drew inside that silhouette of the pinup girl is a skeleton, and she's got what I call a lot of tension and anxiety in her belly, which I showed by a lot of gestural marks. So the objectification of the female body is something I'm just repulses me. And because women are just so much more, I mean, it angers me, and that's in that text piece, The Affirmations of Anger, I read on my sabbatical when I was at the Banff Center in '92. I read Naomi Wolf's The Beauty Myth, and I was getting angrier and angrier by the second when she's talking about the objectification of the female body. And I'm just like, why it doesn't matter what they look like, it's all about their accomplishments. And for us women, it's all about how we look, and it's just so unfair. I mean, it's just so stupid and boring too. Because I mean, just to be judged on how you look, I mean, we're so much more than that. I mean, the world is just, ugh. Anyway, so I just have to, I'm still angry about it. It's worse now, different, in a totally different way with social media, you're right?
But I think at the time, Leesa, I mean, it's interesting because you took that anger into the public sphere, out of the gallery at a certain point with bus shelter posters and a billboard. Maybe you could talk about that sort of public exposure of this sort of, what I see as touch of anger.
Yeah. Well, Regina was great because in Regina I could do so many things. So I talked to the bus shelter company, which is also the billboard company, and I said, I'd like to do this thing. How much would it cost? And they said such and such. So I applied for grants and I got the grants. And then I had a bus shelter project of Clio Ventures Forth. So it was a series of 5 or 6 of this little child that has 2 mouths, one closed, as I was taught to be, and a lot of girls were told, don't say anything. Children too, but for sure girls, be nice, don't say anything that's mean or how you feel. But then the open mouth of the girl exclaiming, oh my God, wow, about the world and what she sees. So that's what Clio Ventures Forth is about. And they were in the bus shelter. And I wanted to subvert advertising. First of all, advertising space with art. It was a real thrill. And I wanted to communicate to a broader audience, not just the audience that goes to galleries, because, that's not, it's a very small percentage of the population. So I thought that, I'd like my stuff to be out there, not for my ego, but so that I can communicate to other people and other people can see some art. Anyway, then I did a billboard project with myself and about 6 other artists, I think. One of them is in the audience, Eric Norbratton. Anyway, so we made maquettes, and they're in the collection. All of them are in the collection of Sask Arts. And so mine is here, 1 inch to 1 foot scale. So the billboard was 45 feet long and 10 feet high. And I got grants, federal and provincial, for that. And it toured to Winnipeg and to Toronto. And I just think it's important for art to be out there, ideas that are about other things, not just advertising bombarding us. So I really think that, I really love doing that. And I'm thinking about doing it again, actually.
Leesa, I just wanted to add something to the pose question, because it was Jennifer, actually, that wrote about a particular body of work of yours where, some of the poses that you take on, they're very sort of assertive, externalized, directed in a kind of, confrontational way. And then others, you go on to sort of have these subjects that are kind of focused inward. And they are not meeting the gaze at all. They don't give a shit about the gaze in that way. And then I just wanted to say that, the company that you're in with photography and poses, whether it's Cindy Sherman or Susie Lake or, there's just a huge number of people we could point to. Joe Spence, a more historical example, Claude Cahoon in the 30s and 20s. So this idea of the pose and then the way it gets manipulated, but how it comes back to your own work outside of photography as well.
Well, I found with the normal work that you had to be able to see my eyes for the photographs to work. If I covered my eyes with the drawing, it didn't work. So you had to be engaged with me, with my eyes. So that was really interesting. But there are some other works that were from my private collection that weren't in the collection of the Mackenzie, or they weren't even shown at the Dunlop in 1997 in the normal show. And Wayne and Jen they actually made a new work on the back wall in the pink area. It's a grid of about, I don't know how many pieces, 15 pieces or something. And they're the gorilla. I was wearing a gorilla mask, another one where I'm an elephant, and another one where I'm a clown. So those, yeah, they were in my collection. They're from the same period of time. And so with those, I was becoming another character. And I think you could see my eyes in all of them. I'm not positive. But if I do turn away from the camera, it means that I'm allowing you to look at me. But most of them, I'm engaging with you with my eyes. So I'm aware of you looking at me. I'm not, letting you off the hook. I mean, I know that you're looking. So, yeah, looking, I think, is pretty important. What's happening with the eyes, not just the body.
A discussion that Joan and I actually had about your work, Leesa, was about how the focus of your audience has changed over time. And this was something that you said in your conversation with Wayne for the She Is Present exhibition at the Dunlop, where you mentioned that you think that the work Normal, you were speaking to men. And sort of confronting men, and in the work She Is Present, you felt like your audience was primarily you were speaking to women. I just wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, when I did Normal, it was a 5-year period, 1992 to 97, with the show being in 97 at the Dunlop. I was, angry about a lot of things, and I was thinking about the audience being men. It was about women, but I was criticizing men. When I did this last show, which took me 3 years, and it was about aging women, I think I was very much more compassionate. I don't think there's really a lot of anger in there, if there's any at all. Compassion was my biggest, I think, emotion. Respect for the aging process and the history of what the women had gone through and how it came through in their body language and their bodies. And they're just totally different audiences. And also it's interesting, the normal ones, most of them are really small, and the aging women, they're all 8 feet tall, and they're very vibrant colors and very physically drawn with oil sticks. So they're way more powerful. The other ones are powerful, but they're small, except the ones I blew up as the giant size. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. We're going to try to wrap up here and stay on track. Tonight, though, just going back to your performative roots in the 80s and 90s, you're presenting something of a collaboration with a dance performance tonight. Could you just give everyone a bit of a introduction to that?
Yeah. So I moved to Winnipeg, and then Robin Poitras phones me and says, Leesa, you've got to go to this dance performance. And I think I was sick in some way. I can't remember it. My husband was also sick, but I said, Robin said I have to go, so I have to go. So both of us dragged ourselves there, and I'm so glad we went, because it was Anastasia Evseneva, and she is in her early 30s. She's from Russia. She came to Winnipeg to go to the contemporary dance school and earn a BFA through them. And she has her own dance company with another dancer. It's called Moving Roots. And she's also a contortionist, so she's in circus as well. So I've always been fascinated by both dance and circus. So I went to this, and I was just blown away by this performance. I think there were 3 or 4 short pieces. I was just blown away. And I read somewhere in the program that it said that she loves to collaborate And I was thinking to myself before that maybe I would contact contemporary dancers or the RW, Royal Winnipeg Ballet, to see if I could do sets or be involved some way like that. I actually did, but nobody answered me. So I decided I'm going to contact this dancer. So I did. She answered back. We had a meeting, and we're just both passionate about the same stuff, about feminism, about the body, about my project was aging, and she really found that interesting. And from her young perspective, she had lots to bring to it. So we decided to collaborate. So we started meeting, sometimes at my studio, sometimes at her place, sometimes at another place. And we worked on a film together. So I made a doll. It's a full-size, soft, old woman nude doll. And Anastasia was dancing with the doll, and we filmed it. We haven't edited it yet because we ran out of money, so I'm applying for a grant. As soon as I get home, I have 10 days to apply for a grant, to edit the thing and get sound and all that stuff happening with it. So we're collaborators, and it's wonderful for me because she's a beautiful, beautiful person and an amazing dancer and contortionist, and I'm so interested in that stuff, and I've always been interested, and it's just a wonderful thing for me that's happened.
So that's a great bonus for tonight. This is going to be great. And what time is that on?
Oh, I should say it's at 8:15 in the gallery, but I should say what she's doing in the gallery is responding to my work. And some of you were at the opening of She Is Present at the Dunlop, and she did a response to that work. Now there's 4 categories of work, and she's responding to them. So she in dance. So with movement, there'll be a response to my work. And it brought me to tears at the last one. And lots of people, almost everyone, had their phone up like this. So it's just an amazing thing to see. So there'll be a sound component too. So someone responding to imagery, to art.
Leesa, one of the things I just wanted to add is in our conversations, you revealed that ballet at different points in your life were important to you, as well as the whole issue of, whether you matched up to the ballet image or not, and also your fascination with anatomy and anatomical drawing has always been really high. So to me, it seems like this collaboration has been in the works for a while.
Well, it's just a thing I'm fascinated by, and I'm so fortunate because it's just something I've always wanted. Robin and I have collaborated, not as much as I wanted to because I was working so much. I just couldn't take on extra projects, and now I have time. So I have another collaborator too in the fashion world. So she's also much younger than me. And so anyway, it's very energizing. And I found with collaboration, because I really haven't done any collaboration, things go much faster. It's really good. When you work together, it goes faster. So I like that too. So
That's great. Well, we have other comments and questions for you, Leesa, but we'd like to open things up a bit. If there are any questions or comments from the audience, please feel free. There's a wireless mic that should come over. And Vincent, fantastic photography on the screen. Very well done. Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
I guess.
Is it on? Test.
Thank you.
Yeah. Why did you pick the goldfish figure Cleo as a representation of yourself? Because, I don't want to say that fish can't talk, because they do communicate in their own funny ways. Is that, plus they're underwater, which is a medium.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, I can start building from there. Mm-hmm. But is it just the childhood association, or did you have other thoughts?
Well, Gary, I don't think there's much theory attached to this. Fish. It was a girl. Cleo was a girl. I was looking for a girl image. I wasn't that profound that, she's in water and stuff like that, although that's very interesting. I just needed an image, and I liked it because it was mostly head. It didn't have legs or arms, so it's mostly head, face, head, and a little tail. So I kind of liked, I think, that it was a person and an animal together. I liked that, not just a person. And it can move. Actually, I do use bird images too. So the water probably is a factor, because I like things that are more fluid than I am, much more fluid.
Mm-hmm. Because the fish, as I say, is a very, silent world to the human. And so if it represents a woman who can't speak but wants to, and so her adventures are, if you like, outside the box of the tank, right?
Yes, Gary is a very profound thinker, and
Well,
he
yeah.
always makes me
We'd better stop while we're ahead.
think about my work in totally different ways, and that's way smarter than I am or was, Gary. But thank you.
Well, I love your work. I went to school in Winnipeg, and I was looking at your stuff, and it just reminds me of that Victorian, when you're coming over Disraeli Bridge, you're like stuck in there's no representation, of woman. The feminine is not. This is obviously the male gaze, the male thought, the dominance. And so when I was looking at that, and then the Victorian, very much the Victorian comes out. But what I'm really, I think, you've got those two houses there, and the feminine caught inside, and women's bodies. And I guess I spend a lot of time in like anti-Indigenous racism and how that feeds all gender-based violence, all of this other stuff. But so how have you come through in this changing time of finding the beauty in of Earth, of our bodies as life givers, and like coming from Disraeli to now?
My studio is right by this Disraeli Bridge. It's on, what street am I on again? I just forgot. Annabella, thank you. Higgins is what I wanted to say. It's off Higgins, yeah. Well, there's a lot of awful stuff in the world, and I think I'm going to deal with that in my next. I want to talk about war and stuff like that, but and more fear. But I mean, I have a lot. I'm a very optimistic person, first of all, and there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot I'm critical of course, but I always feel that we'll keep going on, and we'll just there's so many good people, right? There's just so much good. So I just feel that things will be good, and there's beauty, and there's joy, and there's so many positive things, right? There's things to critique, and I don't want to make work that's purely like eye candy. That's not my interest. I like that, but it's not my interest. It's not my interest to be purely spiritual. It's not my work. But I'm critical, but I'm also very much a believer in humanity, and the goodwill that people have towards each other, and the survival, the will to survive, and that we all have, and I'm optimistic. And I think that's another reason I like public art, actually, because then you're seeing something beautiful amidst all that concrete and gray and awful, ugly stuff. Does that help? Okay.
So you kind of touched on this already, but I'm just thinking about for artists who are younger, and also dealing with work that touches on like the layers of oppression. Based on your experience and career, how do you process that level of rage and anger that a lot of us have, especially considering that like not a lot has changed? over the course of your career, which is super frustrating for women's rights, people with uteruses, all those broad categories. How do you, well, I don't know. I was going to say, how do you like prevent that rage from bubbling over into interpersonal relationships, career relationships? Well, because a lot of men are still in charge of a lot of things.
That's right. Well, if my husband's over there, you could talk to him. But no, the thing is, yeah, actually, I'm a much better person when I make art. So for the last 4 months, I haven't really been able to make art because of all the shows and everything that's going on. And I applied for a grant and, oh my God, wrote an article. And anyway, and I'm not the greatest person at the moment because I've got so many things all mished up inside of me. I don't feel so great. So I need to make art, first of all, because for me, that's how I process the world, and it makes me a better person. The other thing is MAWA, mentoring. I mean, you know, mentoring other young emerging artists. That gives me hope, and I know I'm helping, and I really feel good about that. I don't want to walk around angry. It's not good for us to do that. So that's, I mean, my channel is through my art. You know, I mean, I get it out there. I get it out. And yeah, but it's a hard world. It's a hard world. I mean, I'm anxious and sad a lot of the time, and scared.
Yes.
Blair. Hi, Blair.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Blair.
Oh, wow, this microphone's loud.
Usually you're up here, and I'm down there in Winnipeg.
Hi.
In Winnipeg, Blair's up here when I go to the U of M stuff.
Oh man, the tables
Okay.
have turned. It's really great to see this exhibition, and I guess I'm so impressed and moved by like the tenderness and anger and vulnerability in your work, and also I think seeing it all together. I'm really thinking about how maybe not a lot has changed, but I guess the discourse about how we represent bodies that are marginalized or othered, women's bodies, like that's really changed a lot in the last 40 years, or has been really 40, 50 years, has been really influenced by like, say, queer theory or like critical race studies or disability studies. And it's really kind of informed the way that we talk about and represent like bodies that are somehow othered. And I can kind of see that evolution of thinking and intersectional like practice throughout these various series of bodies of work, so to speak. And I wonder how your understanding of your body, women's bodies, othered bodies has maybe changed or evolved over this time.
Okay, good question.
It's a big question.
Queer theory has influenced me, and I think I've become much more sensitive to the struggles of other people. And I did one piece about it that's in the show. I've done lots of pieces, actually, but one is in the show called They. And so that person has got female attributes and male attributes, also circus attributes, so they're performative for sure in that way as well. I find it really interesting, but I know it's a huge, very big struggle for people who choose to choose to identify with a different gender than they were born with. So I find it fascinating because we're performing gender all the time. So to change, what's expected because of your biological, body is a really difficult thing. And I have tons of empathy and tons of interest in it. I think I've been dealing with that a lot in my work because I deal with like a feeling of masculinity in the female body. Lots of times I'm taking what I consider masculine poses, traditionally masculine poses, or wearing men's shoes, or growing a beard, or something like that. And I've experienced some of these things due to some medical conditions. So I do have some understanding that way. And I just have a ton of empathy, and I just know how hard it is when you're born in a certain body and you decide to play that role is hard enough. So if you're taking another role opposite to what your biology is, that complicates it even more. So, I mean, I have a lot of empathy, but it's a thing I'm fascinated by the subject. So I'm thinking about it all the time, and I'm glad to see transgendered people. I mean, I'm very glad, because the only people I really saw before who were queer were, gay men, let's say, in New York, or transvestites. There were some transvestites who I was very interested in. But now it's a much more complicated and prevalent and interesting situation. If that says, and if that helps you, I don't know. But it's complicated. That's what I could say right now. And like, sometimes I wish for myself that I wasn't even a body at all. So I'd rather be just a head. So and I've done work about that too. So, Cleo was only a head, really. So the body what? A head in a jar. Really. Yeah. So the head in a jar. That's right. Fish tank, fish bowl. So I think that, the body presents so many problems. I mean, pleasure, of course, too, but a lot of problems. And I'm interested in all those problems. And I have one more thing I want to say about the marginalized. I mean, it starts, when you're a kid. If you're bullied as a kid, you're marginalized. So and if you're an artist, I think you're marginalized too. You can definitely feel that way, and I felt that way. So I'm very interested in the marginalized body.
Well, thank you. And thanks for the questions. I think just to, in consideration of time, maybe if any of you have questions for Leesa, you can talk to her in the gallery after the performance. And I just want to express some thanks before we conclude and go down to see Anastasia Evzigneva's performance. So I want to express thanks to the presenters here tonight for sharing your great insights on Leesa's work and the show. Congratulations, Leesa, on the exhibition.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your incredible work with our audience, and thank you for coming on this journey with Wayne and I. It's more than 3 years in the making, I think. And so it's really incredible to see it realized tonight. What an honor it has been to celebrate you as an artist and as a mentor, as one of my mentors. That was very foundational to my own learning. And thank you to Wayne for your dedication to this project and for sharing your expertise and skills to help bring together a body of work from across the country and build this critical narrative of Leesa's practice. Thank you, Joan, for participating and for contributing your writing, such thoughtful writing. Thanks for the team here for all of their work on the exhibition and programming. Thanks to Rob Boss, our preparator. Rob Froze, thank you for your prep assistance. Thanks to Michael Rankin for his prep assistance and framing. And thanks to Gina Fafard and Slate Gallery for framing as well. Thank you, Julia Kruger and Horia Rajabzadeh. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. Both of them have worked as curatorial assistants on the project for these many months. Thank you to Eric Norbratton and his team at Bravo Tango for the beautiful designs for the posters, invites, and text panels, and soon to be publication. Thanks to Catherine Ertz for her friend's translation. And again, Joan Borsa and Jennifer Matatek for their writing for the publication, and to Don Hall for photography. Thanks to our staff, Violet Tang, our operations manager, Vincent Hoteling, our admin assistant, Christy Schweiger, our education coordinator, and Catherine Ernst, our social media coordinator, as well as we've got our gallery greeters, Zing Bronson, Elle Bird, and Chase Boyne, and Brenda Shaw. And thanks for some of the board that came out to help put together the reception. So Pat Aldred, David Pelche, and Karen Pelche. Thanks to all of you for coming tonight and supporting Leesa and the exhibition and the programming. So I invite you now to go down to the gallery to experience Anastasia's performance in response to Leesa's work. And please enjoy some food and refreshments. Thank you. Sorry, I just want to mention, I want to thank Robin Poitras, Ed Poitras, Marcus Marasti from New Dance Horizons, because they're actually partnering with us tonight for Anastasia's presentation, and that performance is actually supported by a Sask Arts microgrant, so thank you to Sask Arts. Thanks.